Hey everyone, and welcome back to today's Explainer. We are about to unpack a literal paradigm shift, one that completely rewrites not just the history, but honestly the future of the modern world. If you love discovering hidden historical truths and exploring some seriously profound philosophical frameworks, you are absolutely in the right place. So let's just dive right in. So, did Western modernity actually begin in the East? I mean, for generations, we've been spoon-fed this very Eurocentric story about where the modern world originated, right? We naturally picture the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, and all those European philosophers. But what if the very spark that ignited Western progress wasn't Western at all? What if literally everything we've assumed about the origins of our modern era is fundamentally backwards? To answer that, we are grounding today's explainer in a truly comprehensive doctoral dissertation. And the core focus here is a comparative study of the autonomous or indigenous modernity of two profound Eastern philosophies, Donghak thought and Daesun thought. This research anchors its comparison in the classical Eastern Trinity, which is the deeply interconnected views of heaven, earth, and humanity. It offers us an entirely new, game-changing way to understand global advancement. All right, here is our quick roadmap for today. 1. The true origin of modernity. 2. The rise of indigenous modernity. 3. Donghak's disorder and liminality. 4. Daesun's revitalization of order. 5. Comparison of indigenous modernity. And finally, 6. Alternative to humanity's crisis. Let's get started with Section 1. The true origin of modernity. Uncovering the Eastern roots. For the longest time, the famous sociologist Max Weber basically set the standard. He claimed that the origin of modernity lay in Western Protestantism, specifically John Calvin's doctrine of predestination. But, well, recent scholarship has revealed a very different truth. Get this, it turns out modernity actually began with Chinese Confucian civilization. This knowledge was brought back to the West by the Jesuit missionary Matteo Ricci. It's wildly ironic, honestly. Confucianism, which so many later blamed as an obstacle to progress in the East, was actually the philosophical spark that ignited modernity and the Enlightenment in the West. Now, you're probably thinking, how on earth are we just finding this out now? Well, it's incredibly ironic, because we actually have modern technology to thank for uncovering these ancient truths. Thanks to the rise of IT and free online platforms like Google's digital archives, scholars from both the East and the West finally have open, unrestricted access to documents from the dawn of Western modernity. These previously hidden, or honestly just overlooked historical records empirically prove that the West borrowed heavily from Eastern philosophy to build its modern society. It's this massive revelation that was just hiding in plain sight, finally brought to light by digital data. Moving right along to Section 2, the rise of indigenous modernity, a new philosophical lens. So because modernity has these deeply Eastern roots, we really have to look at the East's historical development through a different lens. And the crucial concept here is something called autogenous or indigenous modernity. You see, traditionally, when scholars looked at Eastern movements like Donghak or Daesun, they just kind of labeled them as religions. But actually, scratch that, it's a massive oversimplification. These are profound, self-generated approaches to modernity. They aren't just passive reactions to Western influence, they are highly deliberate, sophisticated, Eastern philosophical methodologies designed to actively navigate a rapidly modernizing world completely on their own terms. To truly grasp how these indigenous philosophies work, we need to understand one key academic term, and that is liminality. Think of liminality as a threshold or a transitional phase. It's that tense, often chaotic state of being caught in between. It's when the old order has broken down, but the new order hasn't fully taken shape quite yet. It's the messy middle. Keep this concept in your back pocket because it is literally the master key to understanding these Eastern frameworks. Let's look closer at that in Section 3, Donghak's disorder and liminality, the threshold of change. Donghak thought emerged during a time of just immense social upheaval in East Asia. But instead of viewing societal disorder and chaos, what they called Zuolwan, as simply a catastrophic collapse, Donghak viewed it through that lens of liminality we just talked about. Disorder was seen as a purposeful, absolutely necessary transitional threshold. It was the messy but essential phase required to intentionally break down corrupt, outdated systems so that a new, indigenous, modern reality could be born. They basically embraced the chaos of transition as a vital, purposeful step forward. Which brings us to Section 4, Daesun's revitalization of order, restoring balance.
Now, while traversing that chaotic threshold is necessary, you obviously can't stay in a state of chaotic transition forever, right? Daesun thought historically advocated for what it called true Donghak, but it took the philosophical methodology a critical step further. While Donghak navigated the liminality of disorder, Daesun shifted the focus entirely to the revitalization of order, or Zilon. It asks the big question, okay, once we've crossed the threshold, how do we rebuild? Daesun serves as an Eastern philosophical methodology focused on the architectural management of a new society. It's all about actively resolving transitional strife, curing the disorder, and reestablishing a harmonized, functioning modern reality.
All right, let's tie these together in Section 5. Comparison of Indigenous Modernity, Donghak versus Daesun. This brings us to the absolute core thesis of today's explainer, the direct comparison of the autogenous modernity of Donghak thought and Daesun thought. Both of these utilize the classic Eastern trinity of heaven, earth, and humanity, but they do it in fundamentally different yet totally complementary ways. Donghak utilizes the liminality of disorder. That's humanity actively pushing against the failing structures of heaven and earth to initiate the necessary chaos of modernization. On the flip side, Daesun focuses on the revitalization of order. This is humanity deliberately cooperating with heaven and earth to structurally heal that chaos, resolve grievances, and architecturally build a newly stabilized modern reality. Basically, they are two distinct methodologies representing the breakdown of the old and the breakthrough of the new.
So what does this all mean for us? Section 6, Alternative to Humanity's Crisis, Why This Matters Today.
We have to take a really hard, honest look at the results of Western modernity. Yes, for sure, it brought us incredible technological advancement, but it has also culminated in unprecedented existential crises. We are facing the looming threat of nuclear weapons, devastating environmental degradation, and, quite literally, the threat of human extinction. To put it simply, the purely Western blueprint for modern civilization is currently failing the ultimate survival test.
And this is exactly why the indigenous modernity of Donghak and Daesun commands such immense value today. They offer us a concrete alternative path. Unlike the Western model, which tends to separate humanity from nature in order to exploit it, these Eastern frameworks demand a harmonized, integrated relationship between heaven, earth, and humanity. They emphasize this concept of a religious return, which, by the way, doesn't mean reverting to ancient dogmas. It means returning to a holistic, spiritually integrated worldview that Western modernity completely discarded. It's a philosophical blueprint designed to put human progress back into balance with the cosmos.
And listen, this isn't just some obscure academic theory. Prominent postmodern theorists like the French philosopher François Jullien are actively seeking alternatives to Western modernity out in the East. The brightest minds studying the failures of our current world system are turning to these exact Eastern philosophical alternatives because they recognize a profound truth. We urgently need a new operating system for human civilization. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want you to consider this. The crises of modernity aren't just global. They show up in our daily lives as burnout, environmental anxiety, and just a deep feeling of disconnection. If Western hyper-individualism got us here, how can you apply the indigenous Eastern harmony of heaven, earth, and humanity to find balance and navigate the chaos in your own life today? It is a pretty profound question to explore. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep seeking out the structured truth.